The Taliesin Project came to be following my visit to the North American Welsh Festival at Washington. Mary Morgan from the North American Welsh Choir asked me if I'd be interested in designing shawls and ties for the choir for the following year's festival that would be held at Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the home of Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous Welsh American architect and designer. He became the main focus of the design work, but also not just looking at his architecture and his glasswork and interior work, but also looking at his Welsh connection, his Welsh roots from Cardigan in Wales, from his Unitarian background at Llwyn Rhydowen, the old Welsh chapel where his mother and family were, but looking also at the products of the Welsh blanket that was woven in those areas traditionally, and seeing the similarities, coincidentally perhaps, between the Welsh blankets of that area and the style of patterning, the stripes and the checks and the boldness of the colours, with the similarity to his stained glass work in a lot of his buildings. That fusion became really interesting to try and incorporate into the Welsh shawls for the choir. And if I could get that hint at both traditions, that would be a really lovely way of celebrating the Welshness of Wisconsin and the American side of his family as well. So looking and playing a lot at building the stripes, looking at the very thin black lines, the balance of his checks going through, his delicacy of those with the big bold colours and shapes that he uses. Then running through some of those design work in different ways, different colours. After that, the next process naturally was to see what the loom could actually weave. What could we do on a very simple, narrow loom to weave the scarves and the ties? So we're employing a subtitle for Peter's bit. Francis Moore and Peter Moore have worked with me for over 30 years, or rather I've been working with them. And Francis being an expert and a master of his craft when it comes to weaving silk shawls and scarves. We looked at the concept and then started to sample in fine wools and looking at putting silk in the border stripes. The silk in the red, green and white for the Welsh national colours, just at the bottom, at the border of the stoles, just hints at the nationality of the choir. And that also gives it a nice hanging weight when the women of the choir are ready to sing with the shawl hanging down. The men were going to have ties, but again, with the patterns being complicated and busy, 30 to 50 men wearing a very jazzy tie would be very distracting on stage. And the idea was to give it that clean, classical, rustic Welsh look that hinted also at Frank Lloyd Wright's balance of lines and checks. So a very classy Welsh looking wool checked stripe was needed for the men. This would just echo what the women are wearing. The main centerpiece of the design will be the shawls with their long stripe in the middle and the balance of the red, white and green for the national colours at the edge. Having sampled with Peter and Francis on the loom, the various checks, the various colours, the various weights, the length of the body of the fabric, how long they need to be for the right balance of a nursing shawl or a wrap that would look well on stage, we went into full production.